Today on the Videomaker podcast, Chris and I talk about all the things you really need if you're going to get started with video. You can get all kinds of crazy advice online about all the things you need to buy, but if you boil it down to the bare essentials, what do you actually need? That's what we talk about today. And so I don't want to give it away, so you can just listen on if you want to hear what these things are. As always, if you've been listening to the podcast and you enjoy it, we would love it if you went to iTunes or Spotify and hit the subscribe button. It will deliver the podcast straight to your mobile device, which hopefully is super convenient for you, and it's also a big help for us. And if you want to support the show, the best way to do that is to sign up for our newsletter. And if you've heard me say this many times and you're not signed up for our newsletter, now is the time to do that. It's free, obviously, and we deliver educational and informative content straight to your email inbox a few times a week. So you can get that at videomaker.com/newsletter. Okay, all that stuff out of the way, let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Videomaker podcast. I'm Mike Wilhelm, and with me, as always, is Chris Monlux.
Hello.
And today we're talking about gear, and really it's like gear for beginners. What kind of gear do beginning filmmakers, videographers, that's a bad word, I guess, these days, filmmakers, YouTubers, content creators, what do they actually need to get started?
Yeah, and these are the have-tos. These aren't the wants. These aren't the... these are just like what you need to make something better than what your phone really is going to give you. Just
Yeah. So we were thinking about this and talking about it before we started recording, and we're like, drone? Well, no, not really drone. That's the next level, right?
Yeah.
Lights? Maybe not. So we've kind of narrowed it down to the bare essentials here, and there are all kinds of lists like these online. But this one I think is stripped down to really exactly what you need and no more.
Yeah. This is you're not going to have things that you use every once in a while on this list. This is stuff that is going to be used the majority of the time you're shooting.
Yeah, that's right. And just as a caveat here, we are excluding things that you simply we expect you to have already. So we're not going to talk about cameras. So, sorry to people who are tuning in and listening, hoping we're going to tell you what camera to buy. We have other podcasts for that. But we assume you have a camera, mostly in the form of probably a phone, but any camera really is fine. So we're not going to talk about cameras.
Yep.
And we're not going to talk about computers or editing devices, since most people have something to edit video on.
Yeah, and there's just so many choices in there, and why one would buy one or the other is so unique to the use case that really we don't want to spend a bunch of time talking about that today. That's a whole nother can of worms, and I'm sure we'll touch on that, and we have in the past. And if you ever are interested on the actual specifics of any of this stuff, we have very extensive buyer's guides on Videomaker that you can go and check out, and we have been very, very rigorous about making sure they always have the best and the stuff that's on there. So we want to make sure that you have that resource, but we're not talking about that today. And I guess we don't need to talk about what we're not talking about anymore.
We're not talking about, a roof over your head.
Yep.
We're not talking about lunch.
No office space.
That's right. No, we're talking about the essentials. So I guess let's start at the top. Actually, this is in no particular order. So the first one, though, I think that actually really is important is some sort of camera support. I know that's really vague, but actually it kind of depends on what kind of camera you have. But you need something to hold your camera in place while you're not holding it.
Yeah, man, I'd have to say for a lot of the early work I did, tripod was not, it was all handheld stuff. Really depends on what kind of content you're making and whatnot. But, that is a step into better video. You can,
yes.
how much more deliberate your shots can be if, you can set them up and have them going. There's a wide range. You can go down to Walmart and buy yourself a $30 tripod, and that'll get it. If you're locking your camera down, meaning you're not doing anything, you're just making your framing. But you can also, spend $10,000 on a tripod, which seems to a beginner, it's got to be really crazy to think you could do that, because you might not even, $10,000 wouldn't be all of your equipment. So, there's a full range in there. But really the idea here is just so you can have a nice, solid, level shot. You can do slow, deliberate pans without, any catches in the while you're doing a pan. So, that $30 tripod from Walmart will work, but you might want to hang a bunch of bags with rocks on it, so you have a really weighted down tripod, so you can get a nice smooth shot. Because really although you could really do a lot of creation with just a static shot, it's better to have some movement. And so having the capacity for that is going to be really important.
Yeah, you obviously want to move a little bit at the same time. There are things that the tripod will do that you just can't do with handheld, right? So like you kind of said that you're going to have a little bit of movement if you're holding handheld, even if you do the tricks, like all the tricks we talk about of 3 points of contact, and like leaning up against a post or something to try to make things exactly as stable as you want. There's always going to be a little bit of movement. Sometimes you do need to be totally locked down. But just something here. You need some sort of support. And I would go so far as to say, you've mentioned tripods so far. I'm a big advocate for the Gorillapod for beginners, where this is something that let's see, how big is the biggest Gorillapod? It's probably weighs 3 pounds and it's a foot and a half long or something.
Yeah, I mean their most heavy duty one can, I think, hold like 10 pounds, so it can hold a pretty heavy camera. But there's lots of different sizes for smartphones, for mirrorless, for whatever you need. And the nice thing about Gorillapods is they can be, a good selfie stick for vlogging, but they're just ready to attach to something. The legs are flexible. You can bend them around things. You can get an angle or a shot that you might not be able to get any other way. They're compact, so they're easy to pack with you. Most of the time they actually will have a ball head, so you're going to have a harder time doing pans and whatnot. But I think having some support, even down to a monopod, which is really just support from going up and down. You're still going to be able to go left and right and sway and whatnot. You're going to have more solid shots, and really that's the professional touch. You could have handheld, and a good advice I got when really early on when I was shooting is, if you're shooting handheld, don't try to make it look like it's not handheld. So don't go trying to make that tripod shot with handheld. Just get a tripod, because if you want, handheld shots, cool, lean into it and make them handheld shots. It's when you're trying to make your handheld shots a dolly shot, just going to be difficult. There's a lot of things there. It's like, just you do the right thing. Now, given, there's a lot of ways to fake it, and, you want to do a dolly shot, get a wheelchair and you're good. But, I think steady shots is going to be key to making better video. And I think it starts there with good camera support.
That's right. And, one great accessory that you can get, and if you're shooting on your smartphone, it's an absolutely essential thing to get, is I think if you actually, search on B&H or Amazon or whatever for this product, they would call it a smartphone tripod adapter. But a little clamp that will clamp onto your smartphone that's got a 1/4-20 threaded, I don't know what you call it, threaded socket in there that will let you mount your phone on any tripod, basically. Anything that's made to accept cameras. Yeah.
And the more common ones you're going to find are going to have just the size that goes into like a microphone tripod. So you might have to have some adapters to bring it down to fit on whatever you need to, but adapters are super cheap when it comes to that stuff. And the nice thing about those is, one, you can shoot horizontally, which, if we're not making content for social media, vertical video has very little space in storytelling outside of those genres there. So it's really nice to be able to have that nice shot for going live or anything. Having that shot that's not going to tip over. That's really important. And then the cool thing about that, like, you can use it. Some other tripod. You could use, like I said, a microphone stand, which are real cheap, and then you can have lots of different angles and you can grab things. They have all sorts of ones where there's batteries built into them, so you can do that and arm and start recording with them and all the rest. But just being able to get that shot that isn't just your normal eye view of things is really what sets apart shots. You don't see much eye level shots in beautiful film unless they're like, it's all about the story. If you're setting a beautiful scene, it's not going to be that angle that everybody sees at. It's going to be one that's less than that.
And you can get these adapters that will have a 90-degree rotation adjustment.
Yeah.
So if you are, planning to make some short form content for social media and you expect people to consume it on their phones, it's just
Flip around,
twist
do it
and
again.
turn, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I have a really cool one that's actually from Sennheiser that's came with a mic that is all metal, and it actually has other mounting points on it, and it has a cold shoe, so you could put a microphone or a light or something else and mount it on there and have it there so that you can use it with relative ease, which is really handy if you want to step up your game, which I think really steps into our next setup there, which is microphone.
That's right. Essential, absolutely essential.
Absolutely essential. The audio coming from your camera, sure, there's microphones on there, but if you ever looked at them, they're super tiny. And the place where, good audio starts with good microphone placement. And you can either get a good shot or you can get the microphone in a good location when you're using the microphone on the camera. You're not going to be able to get both. It's going to be rare that you're going to be able to get the camera close enough and the shot will be halfway decent if you're using that. So an external microphone. And the real, we can talk about all sorts of different ones that you can get from camera top microphones, which also have that same problem, but are going to be higher quality, probably going to be a little bit easier to point in the direction of your audio and all the rest. But to handheld microphones, lavaliers, shotgun microphones, any kind of microphone that's off the camera is going to help you capture better audio. And so, the big thing here, of course, is that it's got to interface with your camera, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's why we can't give a specific recommendation here because, actually, we do have some on the website on the Microphones Buyer's Guides for dedicated cameras. But there's always the question of, well, what about smartphones? And this is where it gets tricky because you can't just take any camera or any microphone off the shelf and connect it to your smartphone and expect it to work.
Yeah, well, and even down to the Android and iOS
exactly.
are kind of an issue, but that you have, your Lightning port or your USB-C or some other proprietary connector. And so, you have that, you have to deal with that. Now, luckily, a lot of really all those ports are meant to have secondary microphones and work with them. That was an early issue with the ports that were on smartphones. Mm-hmm. And so now there's more there. And so there's a really big slew of accessories for your smartphone when it comes to audio, from, an external one that could take any XLR input to one that mounts on your camera and is really like a camera top microphone. And really, the big thing about microphones is point them in the direction of the thing that's making the noise, right? So if you're doing a vlog and you're talking to your camera, make sure the microphone's pointing towards you. If you're behind the camera and the microphone's on there and you're talking, turn the microphone around.
Yeah.
But you would think, you just don't, I'm shooting this now and I'm pointing it now I'm behind the camera. You just might not think about that. But that's like just the easiest thing. And now there's microphones that are meant for like vloggers that are picking up from multiple directions. So that's good. So you don't have to be as, mindful of it. But it's definitely a really, really big key. And the thing I would recommend for most cameras is the preamp, which is the thing that makes it so you can actually hear the microphone in the camera, are usually pretty low quality. And that's if you're adjusting the amount of gain inside the camera, you're adjusting the preamp gain, and that they're noisy. That's just so you're going to get more noise in your signal from those. So if you have a microphone that can supply its own gain, so a lot of camera top microphones or microphones that are made for video, they'll have a gain on themselves, and they're meant to actually go into your camera at the lowest gain possible you can set your camera at without being mute or off.
Yeah, so there's always the question then about, well, what type of microphone in terms of the pickup pattern should I get? So actually, beginners might not know the concept of pickup patterns, but basically it's the idea of, what is the shape of the area that the microphone listens at. So those camera top microphones, they're usually very, very much directional. They're called hypercardioid. They're like shotguns. Well, they call them shotguns. Yeah. They just point straight forward, and that's the directionality of it, as opposed to a microphone that you clip on your shirt, which is omnidirectional. It catches things from all over the place. So there's a number of different microphone types. For beginners, there can be some confusion around this stuff about what they should buy. Personally, I'm a big advocate of wireless lavaliers, even at the consumer level. Samsung makes a really nice one that will plug into your smartphone. But the beautiful thing about those omnidirectional lavaliers, and this is not the most professional thing in the world, so audio pros can, bag on me in the comments.
They'll be wincing.
Yeah, but something that you can do, and this is a little bit of a segue to the next topic, is if you have a wireless lav, you can take lavalier is the name of this type of microphone. You can take the microphone itself and put it on the end of a boom pole and hold it near, your subject out of shot, and you effectively have a boom microphone. And again, that's the part where I might get in trouble for saying that, but it technically works.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. If you don't have something, what's better than not having something? Having something, regardless of what that is having something, right? So you have a problem. The solution is getting the microphone closer. How can we do that? Cool. We can do a lot of different things. We can hide the microphone. We can put it on a boom. It really depends on what, if the microphone can be in the shot, a news gatherer might have, news anchor, you'll be able to see it, right? You watch in the evening news, surely you'll see the microphone clipped to their shirt. An interview, totally same thing. No big deal to see the microphone, but have a boom pole coming into the shot, not so much. Doesn't matter what's good for that. Narrative film, you don't want to see a microphone because you don't want people to think they're watching a film. You want them to be involved in the story and not have that, I'm in a theater feeling.
Boom pole. By the way, segue time.
Yeah, segue.
The next item is boom pole. So a boom pole, by the way, is just a pole that you put a microphone on the end of. And you can buy these or make them, frankly. In fact, the charity that runs out of Videomaker's office, Illuminated, uses broomsticks with tape, and they put a lavalier on the end of a broomstick. They're taking these productions out to the poorest places on Earth, so they're using pretty Spartan setups. But boom pole is important for all the reasons we just said, right? Like it helps you get the microphone close to your subject. And I was going to say the one time I've seen this used successfully, and I put successfully in air quotes, is having the boom pole in the shot is on like talk shows where they're talking to people in the audience. They need to reach out and get the microphone to the person who's like the third person in the row, and you can see the pole coming in from out of the shot. But yeah, this is a great tool. Like I said, you can buy one or you can make one at home with just any kind of stick, basically.
Yeah.
And you just need to attach a microphone to the end of it, and it gives you all kinds of crazy durability, versatility with your microphone placement.
Yeah, so all microphones are directional. So although Mike said lavaliers are typically omni, and that's totally true, you can get them in just about any pickup pattern, and just about every microphone you can get that. And it's just really the pickup pattern's just saying the amount of direction you have. So it's just how narrow is what you're pointing it at. Is it going to get just Mike, or am I going to get the space beside him as well? Which would be helpful if he's talking to somebody, right? I want a larger area, then I don't have to be as directional with my microphone. Super easy. The boom pole, so we have a boom pole here. No one's going to be able to see it, or I guess see it even when you're listening to this. And what I run into is I use a boom pole, but it's just me producing, right? So a boom pole operator is a nice thing to have, but I can't say I've ever been on a production where we had enough budget to just have a boom pole, just a boom operator, and so, it's nice to be able to put it on a stand. We have it was actually a really relatively cheap little, it was like $35 or something like that we mount on the C stand, and then we can have a boom, and man, this thing goes 12 feet, so it can really be far. We need sandbags because otherwise it'd fall over. But there, you don't have to have someone manually holding, which is of course also a really good workout. I've had to be a boom pole operator. That's hard to say for me. And it's totally one of those things where if you're in the sun and holding the boom up and having to, and usually, at that same time they're also capturing the audio. It's definitely a hard workout. But if you're dealing with a directional mic, like Mike said, a hyper or supercardioid, which really just means a very narrow pickup pattern, you have to be very directional with it. So if you have two people talking, the boom pole operator would be actually moving it from, person to person so that they both have the best sound in them. And really that also helps with, other sounds not getting into the microphone or what have you. But beggars can't be choosers. And so having a microphone that you can get closer to your subject, regardless of how that is, it can be you taping a lavalier to a stick, which, I definitely say in the far reaches of third world countries and whatnot, having someone holding a broom pole is probably a lot safer than having a thing going, hey, I'm expensive technology. Come do something with me, or take me or whatever. So it makes some good sense, but you really don't need more than that. Sure, you want to look good on set and you want to, there's a lot of that ego that's associated with that stuff. But, we were at NAB and I saw a guy with a wooden shoulder rig on his camera. He built it out of wood and so he could have a shoulder rig. I'm sure the people watching it never knew.
Yeah. Also, I feel like the people who are production people that see the guy with the wooden shoulder rig are like, that's rad.
Yeah, well, and I kind of go, let's go talk to the rig company over here, and I'm guessing that they would love to say they got rid of your wooden rig, and help you out. But I think it's the mic placement is. I actually was recently recording, and the engineer was pretty new and to recording in general. He was really mostly manning the helm, and he did not believe in mic placement. And I'm like, no, we got to work on making sure these mics are in the right place. He's like, I'll just turn them up. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you're fundamentally misunderstanding here, because if you just turn up the gain, it means you're capturing more of everything.
Yeah.
And so you're going to get more of the room. So in this case, our room is pretty live. It's not as live as it once was.
Live being
really reflective. So live meaning the room makes sound along with it. You
get these reverb sound.
Yeah, you say live. Yeah. The opposite is dead, and dead would be no reverberation. Yes. So really, live has more to do with its response to being dead than otherwise. But that's something you have to deal with. And in the world, you have to deal with crickets and airplanes and people, blowing leaves and all the rest of the kind of stuff. Not all of us can work on closed sets and be able to control all of that. So, being able to get close to your sound source is going to make the audio turn out better.
Yeah, and one of the great things that the boom pole empowers you to do is use a single. You kind of talked about this a little bit, but it empowers you to use a single microphone to capture the voices of multiple people. You run into this sometimes. Well, I've run into this before, where you have a production setup where it's like a camera and a wireless mic, and you're going out shooting, and then, this is the only thing I've got, and there's two people that need to speak on camera. Oh, yeah. So you stand close to this other person so that, their microphone's going to pick up your voice, and it's, not great. But if you can put the microphone on a pole and you can do the thing that you just talked about, moving the microphone back and forth between the speakers, suddenly you got that problem solved with only a single microphone.
Yeah. I've done that by putting the microphone on someone's sleeve, so it got between them better. The other side of that is having two people with wireless microphones, and you have to mute them when the other's speaking.
Yes, that's right.
And that's a lot of work, just going through a muting and going back and forth. I mean, it's just more work. It's not a lot of work. But it's something that if you could just capture it with one microphone, less time in post. So these are just things you think about sometimes when you're like, okay, do I have the budget to spend an hour and a half muting all of the other mic there? Or, what's going to get this job done the best way so that we can just be done and move forward? And, sometimes it's getting that rake and pulling the stick out of it and attaching your microphone to it.
Yep.
So that leads us to our next one, which is really audio cables in general.
Yeah, and actually, Chris, I was thinking about this as we've been talking for the past few minutes. We should probably amend this to just cables generally. Like, an audio cable is important because, for example, if you have a wired microphone, you can put it on the end of a boom pole, but you're going to need some sort of extension to get the audio cable from your microphone to your camera. So that's where the audio cable comes in.
Totally.
At the same time, I can't think of it. Well, maybe you tell me, Chris, when was the last time you had a shoot and you didn't need like just a regular extension cord?
That's true. Well, and I mean, I tend to overpack for things, and just because you never know what you're going to do. An audio cable is going to come in handy when you're shooting that wedding, and they have a PA system, and there's a sound guy there, and you go, oh, hey, here's a cable. Plug that in, plug it directly into your camera. Now you have the audio of the ceremony. Yeah. awesome. Having those things allow you to be able to take advantage of that. So having the right cables and attachments, and really we're not talking about a lot of stuff. I mean, extension cable. I like to have a power strip. I tend to bring power strips with me. I'll do a whatever your camera takes in. So the mic from the cameras we're shooting right now, camera that mic's on, it takes an XLR camera cable just fine. So awesome. You can plug it right into it. No big deal. But the camera that's shooting me has an 1/8 inch input. So you need to be able to get it down to 1/8 inch or have a cable that goes from whatever your microphone is to that 1/8 inch. And having the adapters go between them will help you. Sometimes headphones need the small headphone, are 1/8 inch or 3.5 millimeter, or other times they're a 1/4 inch. And so, 1/4 inch jacks. So, having those adapters with you just comes in. I mean, it'll save you a trip to Best Buy. It used to be go to Radio Shack, but there's no Radio Shacks. And I don't even know if Best Buy will have all the adapters you need. So it's good to make sure you have a pocket in your bag that has all the miscellaneous cable and whatnot for it. But that's the thing that's going to, I don't know how many times I've had where we were short a cable and I was like, we can't even start this because I don't have a stupid like $10 cable.
What's the most frustrating is when you have the cable and you don't have the adapter. It's just like it can reach and I just can't fit these two things together.
Yeah, exactly. You have a square peg and a round hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, or you came across something strange you weren't used to. Some PAs have XLR outputs. Some have 1/4 inch. Some have an RCA output. I mean, just all sorts of things. And these aren't a lot of cables. So just take note of ones you come across and make sure you have adapters that'll plug into your camera. You'll really be happy you did in those occasions where you need them. The distance thing is a really big deal of being able to get the microphone closer to whatever you're doing. Because now, the same with the extension cord. You can get the light right where it needs to be.
Yep.
You don't need to futz around with trying to turn it up and bounce it off something. No, I can just move it. And it's amazing how much difference that'll do than having to really struggle with it when you're doing editing.
Yep. Okay, let's see. Next one. I put this on here. I think it's essential. Maybe some people could argue with me. Maybe you disagree, Chris. I'm not sure.
I agree.
Okay, 5-in-1 reflector.
Yeah. I don't know how many times I've had to use one because when you shoot outside, you just don't have control of where the sun's going to be. I mean, you do in the way of you could choose when to shoot, but not all the time have you been to the place before or whatever it is. I shot a lot of commercials in places that I had never been before, and I was producing that day, so just got to deal with it. And the background's got to be what it is. And you can't compete with the sun, so why not use the sun to compete with the sun? And so you use a reflector to reflect the sun back onto the face. And so you don't have either, bad shadows, depending on where the sun is, or you can just fill the other side of their face so that the lighting isn't so dramatic as to, leave one side of the face in complete darkness.
Yeah, so just to summarize what this is, if you've never seen one, it's a big disc. Not always discs. Sometimes they're kind of funky shaped, but they have 5 different surfaces. So imagine unfolding this big disc that's probably, 4 feet wide.
They fold out like the things you put in your windshield of your car. They're real frustrating to put back together. That's why you always have a grip or someone below you to go, hey, put this away.
Yes. Yeah. So there's 5 different surfaces. Yeah. Sometimes they are. Rectangular
sometimes you do
ones are really hard.
Yeah. Sometimes you do it in first try. Sometimes not so much.
But they have five different surfaces. There's white, gold, silver, kind of a silver gold combo, and one that is like you take the cover off and it's like a slightly transparent diffuser. Yeah. But the use of it that I've used the most, which Chris, you just mentioned, was when you're outside, you need to bounce the sun around. Really great for that situation. But actually another use that is actually pretty handy, I never learned it until I started here at Videomaker, is to use it in conjunction with indoor lights or just lighting inside in general. So if you have one light source, say you have one bright light, and maybe an example of this is just like some harsh overhead fluorescence or something. If you flip that thing over to either the white or the silver, you can basically create a fill light with just the reflector. You might need to get it right to the edge of the outside of the frame, right up close to someone's face, but it actually does a pretty decent job as a fill, even for lights that are not super bright.
Yeah, and there's a byproduct of using a reflector is blinding the subject.
Yes, that's what always happens with the sun.
And I'd have to say I didn't care until I started working here, where I then started becoming in front of the camera. And then I was like, man, this is really hard. I'm like, my eyes are watering. What's going on?
Yeah.
But, I've used them for wind cancellation. It's a windy day. Cool. Go stand over there next to them with the thing, and you can make enough of a little pocket for the wind not to bother the microphone. I've used them for shade. So, the background is all in shade, but the subject isn't. Cool. Attach it to a stand, and now you're giving some shade, or using diffusion.
If you use that diffusion to diffuse the sun itself, it makes a really nice, even-looking light that is like, it gives your subject kind of the equivalent of, a cloudy day overcast lighting. Yeah. So soft light, but still bright. So whenever you see on TV or in the movies where someone is outdoors on a sunny day, yet the lighting on them is nice and soft and pleasant, they're probably diffusing the sun.
Yeah, and you see this a lot in, it ends up being in like the foreign affairs interviews, going strange places or whatever, where they have like the Taj Mahal behind them or something.
Yes.
And they're doing an interview, and it usually both the interviewer and the interviewee are have a diffuser over them, and it makes a lot of difference. And just, when you can't control all the shadows, might as well just soften them all.
Yeah.
And in that case, it's really great. Now, the cool thing about 5-in-1s, you can get them for real cheap, but you can also spend a lot of money on them. And they have ones that are like far more than 5-in-1. They're like a 20-in-1. Mm-hmm. And that's like, everything flips inside out and crazy things like that. Different amounts of diffusion, so you can actually like rotate the diffusion inside to make it more or less. But super, super helpful. It's amazing. I mean, I've used it for shade for the subject, so they wouldn't sweat between shots.
Yeah.
We've used it in the car to block the sun from inside the car because we had to do some editing in a van, and we didn't want more light in there. I mean, you can use them for just about everything, and they're flexible. They're easy to hold. I've given one to many non-filmmakers and had them help me, and they were able to do what they needed to do relatively quickly. It's definitely a day one job for someone on a set. It's like, hey, go sit there and hold this and make sure that the light doesn't move while you're holding it, or what have you. It might be next to boom pole operator. The reflector holder is also a physically demanding job that I've had times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought my arms hurt so bad just sitting here doing nothing.
Yeah, it gets extra difficult when it's windy too.
Oh yeah, it's like a sail. So you got to be careful with that.
Yeah. Okay, last one of today's list, and this is another one we might be a little bit vague about, but we're talking about things you need to buy, not things you get for free. Editing software.
Yeah, I mean, I've shot things in camera, in sequence, and then had a video when I was done. That's great, really good way to practice, but editing is where you can take, a bunch of bad shots and get rid of them and put in with good shots. It's where you can make all the changes to how your work is used. I mean, I don't know how many times I've written scripts and shot lists and got out and shot, and we picked up something just because we had the idea when we were there, and the editing allowed us to make the piece better because we were able to include that in there. Editing will help you make the subject look better, help tell your story. I mean, all those things. And you don't need to spend a bunch of money on editing software. In fact, I learned recently, and this must be very common in app editors, is them asking for like $5 a month. That's insane. Pay $10 for it. Don't pay for it again and then have it. Some of these are subscription based, and it seems really crazy because, a mobile editor is not going to be something you're doing very complex things in. So it really can't be that great it can't be that complex to use. So, some of them I think are trying to make so the workflow is a lot easier, but editing software on your computer, make sure your computer can handle it. But, there are so many options out there from free to, thousands of dollars. And of course, most people that edit, they don't use any of the bells and whistles, but like 5% of the time, and all the rest, it's cuts. But it's that sequencing. It's putting all those shots together. Mm-hmm. It's, layering the audio and outputting a final product that really allows your communication to come to life and not just be a communicated vision.
Yeah, and we've said, at least I've said in countless podcasts before, that you don't really need to spend money here to do something. And it's certainly true that you can get iMovie and you can make some YouTube videos.
Yeah.
But if you do want to become, as in part of your identity, a video shooter, a videographer, a filmmaker, or a YouTuber, whatever you want to call yourself, you'd really do need a dedicated piece of software, because there are some techniques that they're not impossible to do with like iMovie or the free stuff, Resolve excluded. But they're just such a pain. So an example of this is L-Cut. I think it's impossible to do an L-Cut in iMovie.
Yeah, and it's just difficult, right? Because like with a cursor on a computer, you have very fine dexterity with your movements. For me, I have a big fat finger, and that's not as precise as a cursor. It's just not going to be. And so doing some of the fine, sometimes you're trimming a frame. Really, I've trimmed, that seems off a little bit. Pull one frame off. Oh, feels good again.
Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing what one frame can be, but surely it can be. It might be when their person's looking at the camera. You never know why you need to pull that frame. And so that real finite detail is helpful. But, a free editing software on a dedicated computer, laptop, desktop, doesn't matter, is going to serve you well. You're going to be able to do it, and you're just not going to be frustrated when you're doing it. If I always had to edit with my phone, it would dictate the type of production I was doing. I would not do certain things because I knew I couldn't deal with them when I was in app. And just, it kind of reminds me of when I do a lot of research. I don't do a lot of research on my phone. Even though I read a lot on my phone, it, for me, is a lot easier to do it when I have a big browser window and I can have multiple things up and look at them at the same time and really have a bigger area to work in. And that's for video editing. Man, more screens, more space, that's all good and more empowerment to the editor. And let's face it, as much as shooting is a craft, editing is a craft. And it's going to be, if you want to tell a story that people are going to understand, enjoy, watch again, you're going to have to either find a good editor or become one. Mm-hmm. And it's not something that's terribly hard to understand. I think a lot of people have it just internally, right? I know how this is supposed to go.
Yeah, we've all watched so many TV shows and movies. We get the feel for it.
And you might have a vision that is so specific that you'll be able to just get in there and do it. So the big thing is are the tools there that you want to use? How easily can you get to them? And then how much can you use them? And that's where like professionals end up choosing specific editors, because typically it's about what their training or knowledge is in or what the project is in. And it is there for a reason, for the sake of the full project and or their full workflow, that there's just things that work better for that. But all editors that are out there will be able to help you do really the most common thing, which is just cutting between two things, shortening a clip, choosing a clip that you want, being able to mix audio and put it out as a single file.
That's right. Now the elephant in the room is Resolve, I guess, right? You don't have to buy it. It's free.
Yep.
So this is one of those things where, technically we're talking about the first things you should buy, and Resolve is the exception, I think, which is really professional level video editing software that is truly free.
Yeah, it is. And, it absolutely why it was designed is to get people involved in the ecosystem of what Blackmagic can offer. And the cool thing about that is that you don't need to use any of their stuff. I mean, it's there free for the sake of, it works really great with all of their ecosystem and all that kind of stuff, but it's completely unnecessary. It's not even as binding as Apple's ecosystem. You can do it on any kind of computer you want. You can use it for editing. You can use it just for color. You don't have to use it for anything other than sequencing, but it has all those tools. So you can do multiple, you could do You can do 3D graphics in it. You can do your audio mixing. You can do your color grading. You can do your sequencing, and you're just your normal editing on it. And so it gives all those things that every pro user might need, and you can either use it or not. And that's really the nice thing about it. But there are some limitations. And these are not limitations that anyone at this level would ever run into, which is like the number of tracks, meaning the amount of layers you can have, and or like the amount of resolution output. Like you can't output 8K from it or something like that. But UHD, which is completely the consumer 4K, is absolutely going to be available for free.
Chris, you think if Apple made Final Cut Pro free, it would make any meaningful impact on their Mac sales?
No, but if they did, and then they made a lot of the awesome functionality only work on Mac, but the software works on PC too, then it might bring a bunch of people over. Like you can open up the functionality from it by using their stuff in the same way of how they get you with all their other stuff. Like, oh, you want your Beats headphones to last 40 hours? Oh, you got to use an iOS device. If you don't, it's only 6.
Okay, time for a bold prediction.
Yep.
Apple will make Final Cut Pro free in the next 5 years. Bold prediction.
Well,
they don't have any, like they don't charge for any software. This is an exception. Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, Motion. Anything else?
Everything else comes with it.
I mean, your document editing, all the pages, numbers, all free.
That's interesting.
And how much money are they really making on this? Like they sold people their copies in 2011. They're not making any money on it anyways for those people.
I mean, Apple's not making. They don't. Yeah. I don't think they're looking for new revenues. I mean, they're definitely looking for new revenue streams, but do they need to be? Probably not.
Yeah. Anyways,
yeah,
a little bit of a tangent.
Yeah. But editing software, I personally use Premiere, but it's because I've used it a lot. I've used it on Mac and PC. I've done a lot of Final Cut Pro, definitely when I was in college. Excuse me, and then in my internships was all Final Cut Pro. And honestly, if Mike said tomorrow we're not paying for Adobe products anymore, you got to use what you got, I'd use Final Cut and I'd be happy with it. I don't even know if I'd switch to Resolve unless you were asking me to pay personally for any of that. But if you're like, hey, it comes out of your wallet, I'd be like, oh, I'm using Resolve now.
iMovie it is.
iMovie it is, yeah, whatever I don't have to pay for. But I mean, think about it. Like if you're paying for the Adobe Suite $60 a month,
60? It's not 60.
50 for the whole suite. If you want just Premiere, I think it's 30 or 27 or some kind of thing like that. But if you want all their products, which honestly, if I'm using one, I want them all. And of course, that's how they get you is all the help. Like, there's not a equivalent to Photoshop. There are others, but it's they're not the same. You're gonna have to learn them, just like a lot of the video editing software. You're going to have to learn how they do things that might be a little bit different. I'm currently using a new audio recording software called PreSonus Studio One, and I was using Pro Tools before that. And really, the thing I'm getting plagued by is just like the rudimentary key shortcuts that I'm used to. Like if I reassigned them, I'd probably be just fine. So the differences between what everybody offers is becoming less and less. So either Adobe's really got to wow people enough to invest in it, or you can go with one of the many, many options that are out there that are free or close to free. That a video editor that edits HD video has been out in the world since 2007, 2006, maybe 2007, 2008. In Premiere and the rest. So there's so many out there that might as well just be open free software because it's not, and there's nothing new that's happening in that space.
So Chris, we talked about a number of different things today. And I want to throw you a wild card before we end the episode.
Okay. What's
on your list of must-haves that we didn't talk about?
I would say good storage, not media storage, but like a bag or a case.
Oh.
And the reason why is the big difference I noticed between my amateur work and when I became a professional was that I had a bag that had all the things I needed in it when I was a professional, and my stuff was safe, and I didn't have to, I wasn't using a grocery bag to bring things from one to the other. I looked more professional or whatever, but I also knew that like the gear was safe. I like cases myself for my personal stuff, but when I travel, I'd never bring a case. The bags are just far more helpful, and there's just so many bags under the sun. But the nice thing is that's where all your stuff can live. All those adapters we talked about, your microphone, the small little Gorillapod. I don't think a 5-in-1 is going to fit in a bag, but it definitely could be held on by your bag. And all those things are, in one place mean I can get to working. If your battery's charged and you got, an SD card for it, you can get making stuff. But having to put it all together, make sure you have everything, you're gonna find yourself not running into the being without if you have a good place to put your gear and keep it safe.
The one thing I would put on here, and this is just a personal thing because this doesn't apply if you're not using an interchangeable lens camera, but I would put on a circular ND filter.
Yeah.
I did not know how wonderful these were until your predecessor, Greg Olson, introduced me to them. And once you have a circular ND, you will never leave without it.
It's circular means by variable, so it goes from clear to full sunglasses.
Yeah, I actually do think there is a difference between circular and variable, and I meant variable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the great thing about it is you put it on there. It's wonderful. You're shooting outdoors, and it's a little bright. Well, you don't necessarily need to adjust any of your settings in terms of like you have your aperture exactly how you want it. You have your ISO exactly how you want it. You just twist the filter a little bit, and it takes off some of that brightness.
Yeah, I first ran into ND filters surprisingly enough doing time lapse. I wanted to do a long exposure, and I wanted a shallow depth of field.
Oh yeah,
you can't do that in the full day sun without an ND filter. Right. The longer exposure is going to give you 5 times more sun than you're seeing in real time, and doing a long exposure at f/22 is difficult in the middle of the day, let alone if you're trying to do some kind of actual look of shallow depth of field or whatnot. Yeah. So that ND filter is going to be really, really key. And they have cheap ones. You have ones that you can go on the end of a lens. You have there are cameras built into them. Surprisingly enough, the Sony RX100 Mark whatever, they have an electronic ND built into the actual camera, and it's a fixed lens camera. And it's got one you can turn on. I didn't even know that until they can shoot 24 frames, like still frames in a second. And so I did some stop stuff, and everybody's like, why is it so shuttery? I'm like, because I had to shoot really fast shutter speed because it was during the day. And they're like, there's a built-in ND in that. I'm like, why? I'm the video guy here, and no one's telling me there's an ND built into this thing? What the heck? Yeah. But huge is the ND filter. And, shooting with the sun is so fantastic.
Yep.
So much light, so abundant. That's great. But then when you need to control it, it can become really painful. And just the simple twist of your ND filter can make it so you can keep exactly your intention of your exposure, and then you can just darken it down. It's just like, I'm going to dim the sun right now. Cool. Yep. I always think ND filters like sunglasses for your camera. Yep. It just makes it so you can see things.
Wouldn't it be great if you could get variable darkness sunglasses?
Well, they do have like the active ones where you go in and out and they go on and they turn off.
But imagine you're driving or something.
And you can go, I want to be darker. Yeah. Oh, I'd like the darker ones because I wear sunglasses so much that I'll be outside and I'll forget I'm wearing them, and then and I take them off. I'm like, oh my gosh, my eyes were hurting with sunglasses on. It's so bright. We're in Northern California, so it gets super bright. But having an extra notch or two. This is so not video production, but either way,
this is what you get with a podcast over, YouTube videos or whatever.
That's true. Yeah, this is minute 46. I'm going to say hello to our audience now.
Yeah. If you've made it this far,
we love you.
Yeah. Okay, maybe that's a good spot to wrap it up, since clearly we've run out of things to say.
We could talk about more stuff, but it wouldn't be helpful.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.
Big thanks to everyone for listening. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, we would love it if you subscribed. And hey, if you're feeling really inspired, you can go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a written 5-star review. It's a big help for podcasts like ours. So for Chris Monlux and everyone here at Videomaker, I'm Mike Wilhelm, and you've been listening to the Videomaker podcast. We'll catch you next time.